Former Trump advisor Peter Navarro joins me now. He is the author of Taking Back Trump's America. Peter, welcome. Good to have you on the program. Thanks for being here.
So nice to see you again, Martha. It's been a long time, but I really always enjoyed our discussions when I was in the White House, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Well, thank you. I want to start here because we just got this report just a short time ago that the Department of Justice, and we can put a piece of this up on the screen, and this, I should point out, is in reaction to the fact that you have been speaking out quite a bit on a number of different networks, telling your story and choosing not to do so before the committee. But according to the reports, the DOJ is asking Judge Maida to quickly enter a protective order to guard against disclosure of evidence in Peter Navarro's case. They say that his extrajudicial statements to the press and on Tucker Carlson's show, where you were last night, reveal your intent to litigate your case through the media. So what's your reaction to that, sir?
Well, first of all, Merrick Garland there put me in leg irons last Friday, refused me access to an attorney while I sat in solitary confinement without food or water. And while I was in there, the Justice Department leaked that I had been arrested to the press. So if they want to start doing gag orders and messing around with communications to the press, I think they should start with there, because that right off the bat not only prejudiced my case, it also set me at a great disadvantage with respect to the law. Now, I know Bill Barr is coming on. I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say, because Bill Barr knows full well the following. One, the Justice Department, going back to the 1970s, has over a dozen memoranda from the Office of Legal Counsel stating I have absolute testimonial immunity. Absolute testimonial. There's no way that that committee should be able to do what they're doing. That the Justice Department never should.
You're talking about your executive privilege.
Me. Executive privilege goes hand in hand, Martha, with testimonial immunity. Executive privilege is that of President Trump. It's not my privilege to waive. I told the committee, as well as the Department of Justice, repeatedly, it's not my privilege to waive.
But, sir,
Bill Barr,
what's being said now
also tell
is that...
you, let me make this point. This is a critical point. What the Justice Department should have done, as the committee should have done, was first negotiate the privilege with Donald Trump. Secondly, if they didn't do that, that was the least burdensome alternative. The second least burdensome was a civil case, not a criminal case. This came up maybe when Bill Barr was at the Justice Department in the Myers case. And there's case law in this that says you have to pursue the least punitive alternative. They didn't do that, Martha. They put me in leg irons.
No, I get it.
And instead of walking across the street to arrest me, they grabbed me at the airport.
I've heard you talk about what happened to you, and I know you also say that you gave them every opportunity to, and I read the document that you sent saying that you haven't been able to retain legal advice yet. So that was something that you say you've had hurdles trying to get lawyers. Why is that? Why don't you have a legal team?
Well, this is going to cost $500,000 from what I'm being told. And I have a choice to make about, that's going to basically wipe out my retirement savings, and I'll be eating dog food if I stay out of jail. And so I'm trying to grapple with that. This case also, and I think Bill Barr will justify this, it's unprecedented. Never in our history has this happened to a senior White House advisor. The case itself is unique. So what I need is top-shelf legal talent who understand constitutional law. So
understood.
This is a difficult situation.
Here's what's being said about this, that you, by going on, and I watched a number of the appearances that you had done recently on MSNBC, they're saying that you're already stating your case. You have blown your executive privilege by going on networks and having these discussions and explaining what your side is to the media, that you have given up that executive privilege by doing that. What do you say?
That's dead wrong. Yeah, it's dead wrong. All I've done is argued the merits of the civil suit I presented to the courts on last Tuesday. I don't think it's a coincidence that preemptively they strike me on Friday with a criminal prosecution. That lawsuit, it's 80 pages. It says, first of all, like Kevin McCarthy says, that committee is illegal and doesn't have the power to issue legal and enforceable subpoenas. I'm right on that. Right there, the Justice Department does therefore not have the right to go forward. That's got nothing to do with testimony to the Congress. That's just challenging it on the law. There's separation of powers issues. That committee is pursuing a judicial function behind the shield.
I understand that you believe that the Constitution allows you the right to do what you're doing, and that you feel that this is unprecedented in terms of the way that they're coming at you. But with regard to the substance of what happened, you talked about, your plan to get 100 members of Congress on your side, and that it was essentially a stall tactic to give Vice President Pence more time to change his mind. A stall tactic. You said we hoped that the media would be exposed to this. But just let me finish my question, okay? You said, I have exactly what you said here. You said we hoped that the media would see all of this. They'd see 100 members of Congress saying that they wanted to send this back to the states, and that would encourage Vice President Pence to change his mind about the decision that he had made based on all the legal advice that he received, that he didn't have a right to do that he had to certify the election on that day. Was that your motivation?
That's not an accurate statement. It had nothing to do with changing Pence's mind. It had everything to do with staying clearly between the lines, the Electoral Count Act that allows the challenge of ballots in any given state by congressmen and senators. And that's all that we were seeking to do that day. And the last thing, Martha, I wanted, the president wanted, or Steve Bannon wanted, who's also being charged with criminal contempt, was violence on Capitol Hill. That basically stopped any ability to count the legal votes. All we wanted was a fair accounting of that. So that's not an accurate portrayal. And all I did, and it's public record, is basically go forward and try to work within the legal boundaries of the Electoral Count Act. The problem here, Martha, is that this is a kangaroo committee. It doesn't abide by its own authorizing resolution. It doesn't have even a ranking minority member, which the House says you have to have even to issue subpoenas. So why would I look? The legal issue here is executive privilege. That's one of the key ones. It's not my privilege to waive. And by the way, Martha, the day before, 2 days before they arrested me, I sent a letter seeking a modus vivendi with Patricia Lloyd, the deputy attorney, and gave her the name of an attorney to call.
No, I read that letter, and I mentioned that letter earlier, and I have it right here. I understand where you're coming from.
Put me in leg irons.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I guess my question really was, when Vice President Pence felt that he had no legal right to prevent the certification on that day. And, according to the reports, the family members of the Trump family also felt that that was the case at that point, or some of them, at least. There had been 61 different legal suits that had gone to states all across the country that had also been shut down. Why was all of that, so that was not persuasive to you and a small group who remained steadfast in your contention?
Well, look, the one thing I can say about Mike Pence, and the reason why I believe he betrayed President Trump, is he came up with a set of legal opinions with this guy, Mark Short, and Greg Jacobs, his counsel. And they may have been good opinions. I don't think they were. But Pence had an obligation to the commander-in-chief to share those opinions with the president and Pat Cipollone, the White House legal counsel, before he announced them publicly and went out there. That was
didn't he several times let the president know where he stood?
No. Not to my, I don't know that.
Not according
but my understanding is that the president never, and the White House legal counsel never saw those opinions. But look, Martha, it's like whatever Pence did that day had nothing to do with the plan itself. I mean, the plan started flawlessly at 1 o'clock, where Cruz and another congressman basically called into question the results of a state. And look, there are serious issues still surrounding that remain unresolved. But at that point in time, all we were trying to do was operate between the boundaries of the Electoral Count Act, and I'm on record for that. But this issue here, this bigger issue here of putting me in leg irons and holding me in a charge which could put me for 2 years in prison, I got to emphasize, it's a two-tier system of justice. All of the clowns and people who are involved in that discredited Russia hoax on the Democratic side, or the FBI, the intelligence community, Hillary Clinton's campaign, they're walking free.
We talked about that.
Free.
Yeah, Eric Holder. No, we have a whole list of people who have been held in
jobs.
contempt of Congress who were not treated the way you were. That is 100% true. And we thank you for being here, Peter Navarro. We'll continue to follow your story, and we thank you for coming in and talking to us. Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.